Hey everybody, welcome into Before the Hedges. I'm Hannah Chalker alongside our UGA recruiting reporter, Jeff Sentell. On this show, we're going to be talking about the future of Georgia football. How exciting is that, Jeff?
I tell you what, Georgia's got the number 4 team in the country, the number 3 team in the country. They're 7-0. All things are good with Georgia football right now.
Absolutely. And this is Kirby Smart's 3rd recruiting class at Georgia. It seems like time just absolutely flies by. And his 3rd top-ranked QB. I don't care where you get your recruiting news from. That's unprecedented in college football. So the latest, we know that Justin Fields committed to the University of Georgia. And there was a live broadcast between Dalton and Harrison on Thursday. A little bit of a hiccup for the QB. He left the game injured. Jeff, give us the update.
Yeah, I spoke to the Fields family this afternoon, and I'm told the surgery went well. It's now one of the most important fingers in all of the state of Georgia. It was a broken finger. It was his broken right index finger. Surgery took about 30 minutes today. It required 2 pins and some anesthesia, and I think it's safe to say that the nation's number 1 overall prospect won't be using chopsticks anytime soon.
Oh, yikes. Well, fans, we want to know what you think as well, so send us your comments all show long, and we're going to get you involved in the conversation. So, like you said, this could be a pretty long recovery. You know, what's the process going to be like?
Yeah, I guess the best way to look at that, guys, is 6 + 6. That means 6 weeks of healing time. Let's hope he has a super fast healing factor like one of those X-Men or Wolverine guys or something like that. 6 weeks of healing time, and then he also needs 6 weeks of physical therapy. So you're looking there, Georgia fans, for about 12 weeks until he starts pitching those spirals around like the nation's number 1 overall prospect.
So you mentioned pitching spirals, but he also plays baseball. So what's the outlook going to be for him once the spring comes and baseball season? Of course, we're not thinking about that here on the Georgia football recruiting show, but what's the outlook for him?
I'm going to put you in the minds of the Georgia fan after they heard about this broken finger. Here's what happens. They go, number 1, is he okay? Is he going to play? Is everything fine? It's not a knee. It's not an ACL. Whew. So then they go to the next part. When will he be able to play? We've already established that it's 12 weeks there for Justin Fields on that front. Now the next thing is, what is he going to play next, Hannah? Will it be baseball or will it be football? And there's a lot of detail to go in this because Justin Fields is actually a very good baseball player as well. He's a middle infielder with some plus speed. There might be the option that he could mid-year enroll at Georgia. That would be enrolling in January of 2018. Or he could spend another spring at Harrison High, play some varsity baseball, give those pro baseball scouts another shot at that arm and all those tools he has. Now here's what could happen. A major league franchise could pick Justin very late, 40th round, 50th round, something like that. And they could do something what is called parking his draft rights, which means you pick the nation's number 1 overall quarterback. Maybe he gives you about 30 to 45 days during the summer for extended spring training or rookie league ball. And then he would hold that rights. The team would hold his professional draft rights until his junior year. And at that time, he'd have to make a decision. But right now, you know, obviously the pro teams would also give him a nice little chunk of cash if they wanted to do that. But right now, he's got to make the decision. And I'm told the Fields family says it's a day-by-day decision whether he will be a mid-year enrollee at Georgia or whether he will be a summer enrollee at Georgia and what professional baseball might possibly mean for Justin Fields.
He's also a really smart kid. He has a 3.9 GPA, got a 29 on his ACT, so early enrolling would be no problem for him. So you listed all of the options that he has out on the table. What do you think he should do?
Yeah, that's a good question. Everybody wants to know all those details. Well, here's what I think is going to happen. I know Kirby Smart to be a fantastic recruiter. Everybody knows that. You can just look at the recruiting rankings right now. And I think the choice here will be for him to basically put it in front of Justin that, do you like playing football? Do you love playing football? Do you love playing baseball? The thing here with Fields is I'm sure he could put that $135 million contract that was signed by Matthew Stafford, and he could say, Justin, my man, I know you can swing the bat. I know you can foul off a lot of those 2-2 breaking balls, but you see yourself earning a $135 million contract more likely in the NFL or in the MLB? And I think when the Fields family comes to that conclusion, I have Justin Fields deciding to go play football at Georgia and not maybe partake in all that amateur and that professional baseball ranks and everything else.
Me too. I think that's like a pretty good decision for him to stick with football. Now, this has been a player that's been kind of a Pied Piper. He's been bringing guys from all over the country to Athens for visits, and some have even committed. Get us caught up on who are some of the guys that Justin Fields has brought to Georgia.
Well, he told me this summer that he has 8 guys, which is, I call on the blog a lot on dognation.com. I call it the Fields 8. And those are the 8 guys that he would love to play with. Now, some of those names are held close to the vest, like a dossier with like future Supreme Court justice nominees or something like that. But I believe at least 2 of those guys have already committed to Georgia. One of those would be Kearis Jackson, the 4-star wide receiver out of Peach County. Justin and Kearis have always wanted to play together. And I do think Adam Anderson, the recent commitment, the most recent Georgia commitment for 2018, I do think that he was also one of those 8. Now, Georgia has sitting at 17 recruits, and maybe they might have 6 more of that Fields 8 to go.
Well, you mentioned Adam Anderson, so let's just go there. The number 2 ranked outside linebacker in the country. And this kind of gives me whiplash because he was committed to Georgia, decommitted, committed to LSU. You mentioned to me before the show he was committed to Alabama at one point, recommitted, decommitted. Yeah. Jeff, help me out. Where is he?
It sort of sounds like a Taylor Swift love song, doesn't it, or something like that? One of those things where he's there and back, and now we love each other, we recommitted. He did choose Georgia. He went back to Georgia. He had decommitted from Georgia on April 22nd. That was a bad day for Georgia football. And that's kind of like maybe the low point for this Georgia recruiting class now that just keeps skyrocketing. But Adam Anderson had decommitted. He looked around. He was committed to LSU of all places in a 3-for-1 package deal of defensive linemen from Rome High School. Then he decommitted back in July. He looked around. He saw what was best for him, and then he finally committed back to Georgia.
So Georgia has 2 players right now that we're definitely going to be seeing playing in the NFL probably next year, Lorenzo Carter and David Bellamy. So where does Adam Anderson fit into this, and do you think he's the kind of guy that can just come right in and step right into those big shoes?
Wow. I tell you what, it's an intersection for all those Georgia fans out there, an intersection between talent, ability, and opportunity. You look at Adam Anderson, the young man's got a size 32 waist. He's about 6'5", about 220 pounds. 32-inch waist now. That's like bathing suit season for one of those guys. But here's the thing: he's going to be ready to go. He's going to be a June, July enrollee at the University of Georgia. The other things to look for there is he weighs 220 right now, Hannah. I think he could put on 25, 30 pounds very easily. The biggest adjustment out there for all you football nuts out there is he's currently a defensive end in a 4-3 even front for Rome High. Now, if he plays at Georgia, when he plays at Georgia, he's going to move to an odd front. He's going to have his hand off the ground, and he's going to be an outside linebacker. So Georgia's going to give him every opportunity to pin his ears back and go get the passer, because they are losing Bellamy and Carter, 2 big-time playmakers on the edges that will be going to the NFL next year. So there's a great opportunity for the nation's number 2 outside linebacker. I think he'll be a 5-star when everything's said and done, and if he does, that's another 5-star in the arsenal for the 2018 recruiting class at Georgia.
So when I was preparing for this show and I was doing my research, Adam Anderson has an incredible story. What is that story, and what makes it so impactful?
I tell you, Hannah, I've been doing this for about 15 to 20 years now. Normally, when you ask a coach, you say like, "Hey, what's the most athletic thing you've ever seen this kid do?" And normally they say something, Adam's got a 6'5" high jump of all things. He can high jump his height on the bar in track season. But the most impressive thing that Rome coach John Reed told me was he told me walking to church on Easter Sunday. Sounds weird, doesn't it? Walking to church was because, number one, he has a deep appreciation for his faith. He told me last year that God's done a lot for me and my family, and I want to show respect to the man upstairs for doing that. But the off-the-field story right now for Adam is harrowing and both inspiring. He lost his sister by the name of Angel. Unknown element. The family really doesn't know what happened to Angel Anderson. She was the one that encouraged him to play football. She was the one that told him she liked that copper golden haircut he used to have. She was a big influence on his life, and he also, when he plays, he watches a video of Angel where she's just very happy. And he feels like he connects with his sister that way. He feels like it just puts the fire in his belly to play for her and to live his life to the fullest. And if that isn't enough, Adam is about the only 4-star prospect I will ever meet that has a 200-word sign language vocabulary. He has a younger brother. That's another reason why he wanted to stay close to Georgia, who is seriously hearing impaired. He's almost to the point of being classically labeled as being deaf. Adam is a big influence in his life, and he wants to stay close to him. And despite all of that, the coaches at Rome High School tell me he is a first-class citizen, and you would not find a better citizen on the football team or walking the halls of Rome High School.
Wow, and what an incredible player that could be a part of the Georgia class. So before we head over to the defensive side of the ball, we want to know, before we head over to the offensive side of the ball, we have somebody that wants to hear about the wide receivers. That's Demetrius Smith chiming in on our Facebook Live. Fans, just keep the comments coming throughout the entire show. Sure. Who are some of the top wide receivers that have committed, or maybe who does Georgia have their eye on?
Well, those are the boys that Justin Fields and Jake Fromm are going to throw to. And last year was a big priority for the class. They picked up 4 wide receivers. One of those guys has already moved to the defensive side of the ball to shore up some secondary issues. But currently for 2018, they got a pair of 4-star commitments. One of them is King Kieris Jackson. They call him King. He's somehow a wide receiver that won the state shot put in the Georgia High School Association this year. Now think about that for a second. Your classically shot putter champions are about 280, 290. They throw the shot. That's a big boys event. And here's this fast wide receiver committed to Georgia who won the state track championship in the shot put this year. The other gentleman is a man by the name of Elijah Moore. He's out of Florida. He's another 4-star receiver, really sneaky, quick receiver. Both of these guys kind of fit that 6-foot, 200-pound slot receiver mold. They're not that big Julio Jones outside on the edges guy and everything else. And another fascinating thing about Justin Fields is Justin is supposed to be the quarterback, but yet he times in the 40 faster than both of those wide receivers right there. Wow. That's like a video game right there. When your quarterback is running faster than the 4-star receivers you have committed, and he's also bigger than those guys, that's a good thing for the Georgia Bulldogs going forward.
Wow. Well, we're still definitely concerned about that finger. We've got some fans here that are confused about how many spots are left. We have Herschel Walker. Maybe that's Herschel Walker himself watching. I'm not really sure. I don't think so. Tom Lavelle and James Crump, they're all saying we only have 8 spots left. I thought we had 7 spots left. I thought we had 10 spots left. Maybe give them some clarification on how many spots are left.
Yeah, I think the number is that Georgia's going to sign 24 guys. Okay. They currently, it's a long story, but the way those blue shirts work is I think the number right now is 24 for 2018. And what's going to happen there, Georgia currently has 17 guys committed. And it's maybe not as simple as 17 plus 7 equals 24. Georgia's got a lot of guys, a lot of big-time guys that are in on Georgia right now. One of the big maybe selling points for Georgia recruiting was that they had opportunity last year. They were going to be coached up. They were going to be ready to play. And maybe some negative recruiting you saw a year ago was that if you go to Georgia, that's great, but are you going to win? Well, now Georgia's winning big. They have all these huge rankings. They're number 3 in the country or number 4 in the country in the latest power ratings you see. And now everybody wants to play for Georgia. And here's what I see happening is the opportunity there is going to be economics at its finest. Supply and demand. There might be more guys wanting to play for Georgia than the current supply they have for recruits. And I can only see this class, which is currently rated number 7 going forward, just keep going on and up. And I think Georgia might end up with the 2nd or 3rd highest rated class in 2018 when all is said and done.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, let's talk about the weakness of the Georgia football program last year, which was the run game, the push up front by the offensive line. Well, Coach Sam Pittman came from Arkansas, joined Kirby Smart. He was hired by Kirby Smart at Georgia, and he's kind of revitalized the offensive line and his coaching styles, his attitudes. What have you seen from the O-line this year?
Well, I think the best way I try to explain it to people is it's kind of like going to Six Flags. You remember they've got that thing that says you must be this high in order to ride this ride? Well, you must be this tall and this big in order to play for Sam Pittman. I think Georgia's average offensive line signee last year was about 6'4" and about 335 pounds. That's give or take whether or not they had the lean protein for their breakfast on the morning of. And you look at Georgia, maybe the big thing they did last year, what was so interesting, is Georgia, if you look through the history of all those recruiting rankings, what you find out is Georgia had never signed a class where they have 3 or more guys which were rated in the top 10 overall at their positions on the offensive line. Last year, Georgia signed 5 guys like that. They've got 1 offensive lineman committed right now in Warren Erickson. They're also after 2 more ginormous targets. One of those is the nation's #1 offensive lineman for 2018. And what Pittman has done is he has respackled maybe a weak area for Georgia last year. It was the push up front. They got a 4-star offensive tackle, a U.S. Army All-American, the name of Andrew Thomas, who has started every game for Georgia so far. He has stabilized what was a weak position for the program. And now Georgia, if you talk about their offensive linemen and their top 2 targets on the line going forward, they're kind of greedy, Hannah. They want the nation's #1 offensive guard, the nation's 2 offensive guard, and if they get lucky and if there's enough room at the end by the time February rolls around, they want a 6'9", 395-pound giant from Australia.
Midas Wilder says must secure Salyer. So that brings us to Jamaree Salyer. And what will it take for Georgia to secure him?
Wow, Jamaree Salyer, that's a long story right there. I've been covering this stuff about 20 years, like I said, and Jamaree Salyer, you can just rip off the bullet points. Number 1, I bet you don't know he does yoga. Bet you don't know he can bench press over 400 pounds.
Didn't know that.
That's the cool stuff. He also is the nation's #1 offensive guard, the nation's highest rated offensive lineman for 2018. He's also the highest rated interior lineman. Now that's all those good googly moogly centers and guards going back to 2006. Former Bama all-everything by the name of Andre Smith. That was the last time a guard was rated that highly as Jamaree Salyer is right now. He hails from Pace Academy in Atlanta. I'm just going ahead and say it. Wherever he signs, I think he is an instant freshman starter wherever he signs.
All right, Jeff. Well, besides Georgia, what are his possibilities to sign? Who else is in this race?
I tell you what, this is rich program problems here, Hannah. I mean,
no.
it's really it's not Ole Miss, by the way. What you've got right there is you've got Salyer. I think it's going to come down to Clemson and Georgia. Those are the 2 schools that are kind of duking it out, going neck and neck. But you know you're a great football player when Salyer tells me that Ohio State is his safety net school. He's going to be taking an official visit this week to Ohio State to check out that Penn State game. And that's just a safety measure to make sure if things don't work quite out well with Georgia or Clemson, then maybe Ohio State would be a contender. When you've got the Buckeyes as your safety net school, that is some very impressive territory you're in right now.
When does he make his decision? I know it's coming up soon, and I know that Georgia fans really want to see that red and black.
Yeah,
which I'm wearing today, by the way, for everybody.
Look at that red and black right there. Color coordinate, like that movie Boomerang. You got to coordinate. You got to coordinate. So here's what I'm thinking. Jamaree Salyer, the U.S. Army All-American, will make his decision on December the 15th. It's going to take a little bit, but with Justin Fields committed and with Adam Anderson also committed, this young man right here is clearly the #1 target left on the board for Georgia in 2018. And I think his impact will be every bit as great, every bit as ginormous as 5-star Zamir White, the nation's #1 running back, and also that Fields fella that might play a little quarterback for Georgia as well.
Jeff Sentell, I'm Hannah Chalker. This is Before the Hedges, your University of Georgia recruiting show, which we're hopefully here every single week to talk to you about the future of the Georgia football program. But fans, this is your turn to send in your questions, comments, concerns. We want to hear it. So we're getting a lot of comments about Hill. Carol Hinnenberry says Hill, and James Crump says Hill might escape to Auburn. He wants to play guard, not center. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think Georgia is going to have a lot of fun topics to look for. What they're going to do is they've got Warren Erickson committed. I think he could play an NFL center one day. He's now the nation's #3 center. And then they also go to Jamaree Salyer, who's also very smart, could also play guard or center. And that's the same pitch they're using with Trey Hill as well. And that's very smart on Georgia's benefit because they're going to sit there and say, okay, we got all these guys. We don't want to pigeonhole them into 2 spots on the depth chart. We're going to expand it a little bit by saying there's the chance to come in right away and play at center. And you look at guys like Trey Hill, 6'3.5", about 350. Warren Erickson, another great player, plays a high school tackle. He's recently shifted to center for North Gwinnett as well. And you got 3 great options right there. And what really happens when you get into an offensive line room in the SEC is you take all your guards and you say, okay, who's big, who's nasty, who is nobody running through. And then you sit there and go, and also who has a really smart head on their shoulder to handle all those checks, handle all those line calls, and then that's the guy you try to spackle in there at center, and most of those guys usually stick.
What about Tyreek Johnson? Jimmy Barnes says we're not really recruiting Tyreek Johnson anymore. Looks like he's leaning to Clemson.
Yeah, Tyreek's a guy that you look at everything going on with Tyreek, and he was a guy that had been connected to Georgia for quite some time. Just took an official visit out to UCLA of all places, and he did look really good in that baby blue when you see all those recruiting photos that come back. But Georgia has a lot of ties. Richard LeCount, the 5-star safety who's the freshman, they're kind of like a brother, younger brother, older brother relationship with Tyreek. I do still think Tyreek Johnson comes in maybe for the Kentucky game to take his official visit. He's been to Georgia quite a lot. A lot of the crystal ball culture right now has Tyreek Johnson leaning towards Clemson because maybe there's some things happening behind the scenes. But any narrative that I'm going to believe about Tyreek Johnson in Georgia, that to me only means that Georgia has found bigger targets, more priority targets to look at right there, Hannah. And I think maybe the biggest defensive back target they have left is 5-star cornerback Tyson Campbell out of American Heritage in Florida. He's the nation's #3 cornerback. He's higher rated than Tyreek, and when Georgia doesn't have a whole lot of room left, they're going to sit there and try to prioritize every spot. And Tyson Campbell is an instant starter, an instant plug-and-play rep guy. 6'2.5", 187 pounds. He's got track speed, bona fide 5-star. Because people look at Tyreek Johnson and they wonder, is he a corner? Is he a safety? Tyreek always says he wants to play cornerback at the next level when most of his best film has him at safety. Well, with Georgia, a program that needs corners, I think they're only going to sign 4 defensive backs this year. I think they're going to pick up 2 corners. I think Tyson Campbell is kind of like shopping at Tiffany's when you're talking about the nation's elite cornerbacks right now.
Wow, Tiffany's.
Not a bad thing.
I like the sound of that. Okay, we're getting a couple of questions about KJ Henry. Tony Spano, what's the latest on KJ Henry? And Maurice Carter, what is the possibility of Georgia getting KJ Henry or Micah Parsons?
Micah Parsons is, I think, a guy that sounds like he's really thinking about staying home state, staying with Pennsylvania, staying with Penn State right now. I think the name to really look for there for Georgia is KJ Henry. KJ Henry just took his most recent official visit to Virginia Tech. Like those Hokies a lot, but his first official visit was to Georgia. He was there for that rousing victory over Mississippi State. I'm sure you didn't mind that one. Nope, didn't mind that one. And Georgia just kind of boat raced Mississippi State. KJ Henry saw it. His family saw it. They really like it. They're feeling a good vibe right now about Georgia. And if you ask me, I think that race with Georgia, Virginia Tech, schools like that, maybe a Clemson a little bit, I think that's really the race. Now, KJ Henry does have his official top 5. You got Alabama in there as well. You got South Carolina in there as well. I do see Georgia with a very, very good shot right now at KJ Henry.
We have a great question from Justin Hires. Jeff, biggest recruit we haven't got yet that's rising in the ranks?
Rising in the rankings. The biggest recruit that Georgia hasn't gotten yet that's rising in the rankings.
Good question.
Well, they don't really re-rack the recruits a lot, especially during the season right now. I mean, Georgia, you look at it, I think a guy that's kind of came up a lot, and it's probably one of the toughest son of a guns I've ever heard of, is a guy by the name of Luke Ford. Luke Ford's out of the state of Illinois, one of those great All-American tight ends. He's about 6'6", about 245. And Hannah, get this. This guy broke his clavicle, or started breaking his clavicle in week 2. He's like, oh.
You start to break your clavicle.
Start breaking it, and then he plays another week. Man, this hurts. Plays another week. Oh, man, this hurts. I'm going to go get it checked out. And they said, Luke, your clavicle was breaking. Now it's broken. And Luke, built for tough, pardon the pun here, Luke misses about 4 or 5 weeks, and he was back on the field last Friday night for his high school team for the last game of his regular season. Luke Ford, the nation's #2 tight end. Georgia is sending him about 100 letters a day. I think Georgia's in big right there with Luke Ford. And you got to remember, to answer your question the best way I know how, Luke Ford's a guy that has told us, he told us at the opening in Oregon, that I'm going to go play with Justin Fields wherever he goes. Well, I think you guys do know that Justin Fields is currently committed to the University of Georgia. And I think when all is said and done, look for Georgia to get an unofficial and another official from Luke Ford. I already loved that visit anyway, and I do think Georgia has a great shot at landing Luke Ford as well with one of those 7 remaining scholarship options for 2018.
Built Ford Tough. That sounds like a good sponsor here for Before the Hedges. All right, we've got Tyler Mathis, and earlier in the show we were talking about Justin Fields. As we all know, he broke his finger on Thursday in the game against Dalton, and he had surgery today, just today, could be out for 12 weeks. We've got a question from Tyler Mathis. Why are we so concerned about Fields? It's like people assume his game will translate to college and he can force both Fromm and Eason to the bench. So yeah, he could be redshirted, he could wait. So why are we so concerned about this finger break right now?
I think the most important thing for there is just simply numbers. Like you said earlier in the broadcast, back-to-back-to-back 5 stars. Well, that has never happened in the annals of recruiting history. Nobody has stacked up 5 stars back-to-back-to-back in successive years, because it's pretty simple. When there's one 5-star there and there's another 5-star there, unless they can't even hit the ocean falling out of a canoe, they're going to play, and they're going to play well. But Georgia, if you look at it right now, those are the only 2 scholarship quarterbacks Georgia has right now. They have Jake Fromm, who is playing extremely well. They have Jacob Eason as well, who was the starter all of 2016, but is now in the reserve role for Georgia. Should something happen with Jacob Eason, should anything happen with Jake Fromm, I think the 2017 season is a big lesson for you that you're only one play away. And look what happens if Jacob Eason transfers away or if Jacob Eason stays. Justin Fields is still only the 3rd quarterback in the program at Georgia. And he's needed, that finger needs to be healed, and I do think he's going to get every chance, maybe a package, maybe to learn to get on the field right away from Georgia, because he is a very special talent. Jake Fromm's fantastic, off the charts intangibles. He was never the nation's #1 quarterback. He was never the nation's #1 overall prospect. Same thing goes right there for Jacob Eason as well. Justin Fields is a unique blend of intelligence, ability to play the game, and you got to remember, he has that dual threat capacity. Kirby Smart had all the 5-star D linemen, all the outside linebackers, all the safeties, all the corners he could ever ask for at Alabama. He'd already checked off every wish list needed recruiting, and a young man by the name of Deshaun Watson still put up a ton of points, still just ran right through that Alabama defense. I think Kirby Smart knows how hard it is to defend a dual threat, especially a very sharp dual threat. And I just kind of go back to 2 things that Trent Dilfer told me out in Oregon this year. That quarterback guru, the guy that knows everything, right? The guy with all the talent, the guy that maybe didn't have it mentally between the ears until late in his career. He said 2 or 3 very powerful things about Justin. One, he's never seen a young man handle the approach of winning the Elite 11 as professionally as Justin Fields did. And then the other thing is something only a quarterback guru would pick up on. He watched his eyes, and he said his eyes have to be quicker than any quarterback he's ever worked with at that age. And what he means by quick is he sees the man open, a yellow jersey being guarded by an orange jersey, and he sees the green grass and the safe zone for him to throw it to, and gets rid of the ball faster than any young quarterback he's ever been around. Wow. I think Justin Fields is really special. I think Jake Fromm is really special. And what Kirby Smart wants to happen at that position is kind of like risk management insurance. You just don't want one stud player at a position. You want to have 2 or 3 guys there competing every day in practice for depth. And then should an injury occur, you can roll out a new 5-star, and the team's hopes are just not tied to one player.
We have some really, really concerned fans on Facebook, and fans keep bringing your comments, your questions, your concerns, and it's not about Justin Fields' finger.
Oh, wow.
It's about your Wednesday night show, and they're concerned that this could be taking away from it.
Breaking news here, Hannah. This is going to be kind of like the buffet line or whatever. It's just more recruiting intel. This is not an instead of. Thanks, you guys, for I don't know if my mom and my aunt and my cousin.
I thought that was your mom. Yeah. Somebody also said you looked very nice today.
My daughter. I don't think everybody else was sitting there. Everybody that lives in my neighborhood was throwing some love right there. But what's happening right there is this is an in addition to vehicle to get you guys all the latest and greatest with UGA recruiting news. We kind of call it Before the Hedges because, I don't know, some writer back there came up with something like that about Between the Hedges. Let's talk to the guys before the hedges. You know how those writers are. Who knows about what we're talking about there? But look for this show to get bigger and bigger and badder. And I mean badder like, bad to the bone. Just like Georgia's recruiting class, we're going to keep adding lots and lots of layers to this program. Hope you guys are going to enjoy it.
Okay, so on the show today, we've talked about Justin Fields. We've talked about Adam Anderson. We've already talked about Sawyer. What about the running backs? Have we touched on any top running backs and who could be next? Because we've seen the top caliber running backs and what Georgia they're not afraid to play freshmen. We know that. We know that. They've got 2 seniors that are absolutely incredible. But the running back play this year, in my opinion, really opens up things for recruiting, because if I'm a senior in high school and I see the way that Georgia uses their running backs, I'm salivating. So what do you think about that position?
Well, it makes a lot of sense, Hannah. The first thing I'll say is probably a Bulldog point of pride for the program. Georgia's recruiting is so strong right now that there are some schools in the SEC who their top running back recruit maybe didn't score a touchdown last week. Happens every Friday night. Everybody keys on that big-time guy. Well, Georgia had a defensive tackle recruit lined up at running back last Friday night, and he scored a touchdown. I mean, come on, man. I mean, the Georgia philosophy is simple. I think a lot of these high school running backs right now are thinking about carries, they're thinking about shelf life, and they're thinking about longevity. And they know if they take 400 carries a year in the SEC, that's not going to translate into a long NFL career. So what they want to do is they want to be part of a running back tradition by committee. And what that means is they want to have their 15 carries to 20 carries. They want another guy to get 10 to 15 carries and another guy to get 5 to 10. That might be the young buck, kind of like DeAndre Swift right now. And they just keep rotating them in. And when you look at Georgia, they're going to graduate Sony Michel. You're going to graduate Nick Chubb. And then you're going to have 2 spots in the depth chart open. Georgia's already got Zamir White, the nation's #1 running back, committed for 2018. And this guy, the stories I've heard about this guy, I've heard he doesn't take water during practices. I heard he never sweats. I heard he rides horses on Sundays to kind of chill out. And none of those are fairy tales. Those are actual true intel bites for Zamir White. He's 6'1", he's about 225. He runs about a 10.6 in the 100, and you know you're good, Hannah, when people have been calling him Zeus.
Wow.
The nickname Zeus by the time your sophomore year rolled around. That's how good he is. He's going to wear probably #3 at Georgia. He will enroll early in January of 2018, and Georgia's got it rolling so good right now that they have the nation's #1 quarterback, the nation's #1 running back committed. They're after the nation's #3 running back recruit, and James Cook. That's the younger brother of Dalvin Cook.
That's who people are asking for right now. They're asking you, what is the update on him?
The update on James Cook is kind of this. I think he's going to wait, barring a dramatic, not a traumatic turn, a dramatic turn of events. He's going to commit on the December 20th. That's the first day of that early signing period. Had a bonkers visit at the University of Georgia. He was also there for that Mississippi State game. His mother told me that visit was bananas. That's pretty good. And so when the mother says the visit was bananas, that's probably a pretty good thing for Georgia to say that visit went well. I think Georgia is trending very heavily for James Cook, and I think they are the team to beat as well. And you look at Georgia, they lose a Nick Chubb, they lose a Sony Michel to graduation, and they do reload with the nation's #1 back who goes by the name of Zeus, and then Dalvin Cook's little brother, the nation's #3 running back for 2018. Going to be a fun backfield for years and years and years in Athens.
We've got some people asking about quarterbacks, so I know we've talked a lot about that. You have Fromm and Eason, who are already at Georgia, and Fields, a 5-star quarterback, coming next year. Who transfers? Who stays? What are your thoughts on the quarterback situation at Georgia?
Hannah, this is like that friend we knew growing up that goes out on like 3 or 4 dates, and they're like, okay, I think she's the one, and I think he's the one, blah, 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 blah. Just pump your brakes, people. Let the season play out. Let Eason see where he's at the end of the year. Maybe he comes in and wins a big game against Florida with some relief work, or maybe a big game down the line. I think all things will sort themselves out. And if Jacob Eason does transfer away, then that means there's the priority for Justin Fields to get on the field faster for Georgia, because you got to get that backup quarterback ready, because he is only 1 play away. And let's not forget, Jacob Eason started about 12, 13 games in the SEC last year. Didn't look too bad. Didn't look over the top amazing. But it looked like he had some points. He had some room to grow as a sophomore. The problem is Jake Fromm is kind of Tom Brady'd him or Wally Pipped him. What I mean by that is he got hurt, the door got open just a little bit, and Jake Fromm just ran right in, and he's not giving Jacob Eason any sort of leeway to reel him in like a big bass in the boat, man. He's just not. It's hard for anybody to reel in Jake Fromm right now, because Jake Fromm is playing out of his mind.
Yeah, and people love it, people hate it. People are all over the place with who should be a QB, but Fromm seems to be the guy right now. And you mentioned Florida. Finally, the Georgia-Florida rivalry this Saturday in Jacksonville, 3:30. It's the CBS game. A lot of people want to know your thoughts on the game. And before the show, we were talking about, I asked you, I was like, who were some of the big recruits that could possibly be at this game? And you told me they cannot be official recruits at this game. They have to be guests because it's a neutral site. So let me know your thoughts on the game and why do they have to have a guest pass? Why can't you just have a recruit on the field for the Florida-Georgia game?
Well, Kirby Smart did mention this today in his press conference. Someone asked him that softball question about, what do you think about the Georgia-Florida rivalry? They were trying to sit there and say, is Kirby going to weigh in? I think it needs to be here 2 years. I think it needs to be here 2 years. There's theories out there about one game needs to be played in Jacksonville, one in Atlanta, one in Gainesville, one in Athens, and kind of spread the love all around right there. Well, Kirby's kind of main point was always the recruiter. He says, the big thing is our two schools, you lose the chance to have a marquee game and have 100 of the nation's top prospects in the house and to bring them into the house and get them on campus for the game. The way Kirby looks at it is that's a missed opportunity to recruit, but the Georgia-Florida game is so special. It's a split stadium. Half of it's orange and blue. The other half of it's red and black, except for maybe this year. Georgia might take over that stadium as well. I hear some Gator fans are unloading their tickets as well. But there's a chance there for recruits to visit. It's kind of like the neutral site games with the Chick-fil-A Bowl earlier this year. I think they can show up and attend the game. Tickets will be available. But I do not think that any recruiting is going to take place at that game. Just a big, world's largest outdoor cocktail party. I'm not supposed to say that, but wink, wink, you guys know what that game is.
You said curtain. Somebody, fan said Scully. Is there any Scullies that are going to be coming up anytime soon?
Scholarship openings. Well, that's another thing. If you look at who's not playing, I think that's a good indicator of worth. I think Georgia's got a couple of players where they're not contributing. Upperclassmen, they're not contributing right now. It may be a situation where if they want to continue their career, and play some football. If they want to play some football going forward, then that's what they'll have to do. Maybe they want to get some reps and extend their college career. Maybe if they transfer out, then more opportunities will arise elsewhere.
So we were talking about Jamari Sawyer. I'll get his name right eventually. I'm still learning all of these names. You've poked fun at me a couple of times. I am an Ole Miss grad. Don't kill me, please, on the comment section here. But I love Georgia. I've been covering Georgia for years, so trying to get updated on all of these names. But you mentioned his recruiting date. What was that again?
December the 15th. That's when he's going to make his decision. We've had the opportunity to follow him a lot. We've got a series called The Season featuring Jamari Sawyer, the nation's #1 OG. And as you get to know him, you can call him Mari. Most people call him Mari right there. He's a huge kid, great grades. Team leader type. He's a guy that really cares about football, really passionate about football, and he's been coached up very well by some of the best offensive line coaches, some of the best high school coaches in the nation. I mean, Jamari's lucky enough to have a future, he's a college All-American in Chris Slade, who also played 9 years in the NFL for the New England Patriots. That's his head coach at Pace Academy. And Chris Slade told me many years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, that he said, Jeff, that kid's going to play on Sundays. Pretty sure about it. Just kind of nonchalantly, like, I'm going to get some witch for lunch and something else like that. That's how sure he was that Jamari was big time.
Well, before we go off air and before we have a full screen of all of the commits, we want to show his season trailer, right?
We got a trailer.
Yeah.
We got a trailer. It's not quite The Last Jedi. It's not quite The Grove on a Saturday, but it is pretty cool.
All right, let's take a look.
Let's go. Game time is at hand. This is the time when a team finds out how well it prepared for this week's challenge.
All right, on that line.
I don't know about you, but that gives me chills.
I tell you what, everybody says it, what was one of the greatest shows in the history of television, Friday Night Lights. who Coach Taylor was actually a Georgia fan, Georgia graduate, if you guys didn't know that out there. But you talk to Jamari. There's so much good stuff in that episode. It's probably going to drop sometime this week. You got a Florida State offensive line coach in there. You got him and Coach Kev working in the lab. You got so much good stuff. You got Jamari at halftime and how much football means to him. If you didn't know about Jamari already, if you didn't know how important Jamari Salyer is to the Georgia's class of 2018, I think you're going to enjoy that program. It's going to be on Dog Nation, the Diehards Network. I'll show you how to get to it with a tweet sometime this week.
All right. Well, I told you I'm going to get so much hate for going to Ole Miss, and I am. But I promise you, this red is not Rebel Red. This is Georgia Red, and I have been covering Georgia for years. So
guys,
help me out.
Take it easy on. Take it. I got her back on this one. She did grow up in the state of Georgia. We got a peach here doing our show. It's quite all right.
Went to Lassiter High School.
There you go.
Go Trojans. Okay, before we wrap things up, let's just take a quick recap of who Georgia has. Just list some names off for us, and maybe one or two names that nobody knows about that people should keep their eye out for.
Well, I think we've already mentioned Luke Ford in the class today, built Ford tough. He's a guy to think about. We've covered James Cook. We've covered Tyson Campbell. We're catching a lot of the guys, Trey Hill, Jamari Salyer, that might show up in the class of 2018. But one of the things we're going to do with this program week to week is we're going to make you those recruiting students that read a couple of chapters ahead in the book. Do you know anybody like that you went to college with or anything like that?
No.
Probably not. Probably not. But we're going to get you guys a little bit informed on what's coming down the track later on for Georgia football. And a name to know, I want you guys to start thinking about, is Owen Pappoe.
Okay.
Owen Pappoe is a 2019 5-star. Georgia's after him with both barrels. They're really trying to reel in Owen. Now, Owen is a unique prospect. He's the nation's number 5 prospect, I believe, for 2019. Nation's number 1 outside linebacker. He got an offer, Hannah, from Georgia in June before he entered high school. Yes. Yep.
They do that now before you get to high school. So it's still in middle school.
Yep, that's right. I call it a mid-varsity offer where you're sometime between middle school and varsity football. He offered him, Alabama offered him, a lot of other big boys offered him. He's going to make his decision at the Under Armour All-American game this year. He's just a junior. He's going to make his announcement. That's the plan he's told me recently, is that's when he's going to make his announcement. And I think he's very important to Georgia for several reasons. Number one, he's a Georgia kid, and maybe he can bust up some of that Gwinnett County mojo that Georgia hasn't had going on recently. I think the other thing with Owen is he's kind of the key for Georgia to have the number 1 recruiting class. Now, we've kind of given Dog Nation a chance to puff up their chests a little bit about 2017 recruiting, 2018 recruiting, but neither one of those classes was the nation's number 1 class.
Wow.
And I think a guy like Pappoe, who would be the 4th 5-star for Georgia in 2019, should he choose the Dogs, gives Georgia a great lane, a great inside lane to challenge for the nation's number 1 class in 2019. And a lot of people say X's and O's, Jimmy's and Joe's. All I'll say is this: Kirby Smart said at his press conference today that it's all about the players. The players matter a great deal, and when Georgia gets better players than everybody else has, when they start stacking up those Alabama-ish recruiting classes, I think a lot of those people who maybe would sometimes give a like button or a share to some of the things we're talking about right here, I think that's going to make them very happy.
So Kirby Smart's 2016 class was 7th in the nation according to 24/7. His 2017 class was then 3rd in the nation according to ESPN, Rivals, 24/7. What are your predictions for this year?
I think it's going to be 3rd right now with what I'm looking at. Depends on what happens with other schools and maybe which schools do not close well, like Georgia will close well. I think it could climb all the way up to 2. I think it could get to 2. But number 1 is a pretty fat cat in Ohio State. They got a lot of big boys coming. They got some more big boys coming. And Urban Meyer has had the benefit of recruiting from strength. What Urban does is he recruits a year ahead. He gets his 2018 class knocked out and in the book so well that then he goes and works on 2019s. That's what he did in 2017 and 2018. Going to be pretty hard for Georgia to catch Ohio State, but I think they can come in number 2 in the country possibly for 2018.
All right, we're getting a lot more questions about Justin Fields. We're almost done here, so as soon as we're done, you can scroll on back. It'll be on Facebook Live forever. Scroll on back and we'll tell you all about the update on Justin Fields and his baseball career and what that means for both baseball and football.
6 + 6, that's the way. 6 weeks of heel time, 6 weeks of physical therapy, and then he's back throwing that beautiful out pass or that Hail Mary like that bonkers Hail Mary he threw against Dalton before that terrible injury that he suffered with the broken finger that ends his senior season. But Justin Fields is out of surgery. He's okay, and I'm sure he's probably able to check his cell phone right now and go on Snapchat and everything else. So he did come out of surgery okay. It's about 30 minutes, 2 pins, and some anesthesia.
We're running out of time. We could do this all day. Where can people watching right now find more information on Georgia recruiting?
Got to go to www.dognation.com/recruiting. At Jeff Sentell, you know that's where the intel is on Twitter. And Wednesday Night Live, we've got our Facebook Lives. They're not going anywhere, folks. Thank you guys for mentioning that as well. This is kind of just a more formatted show. We can kind of put the topics in front of you guys, professionally produce them so you guys can see what they look like. And the other thing we got going on as well is we've got Marlowe's Tavern, Brookhaven. Tomorrow we have a Dog Nation Invasion Jacksonville trip. You guys know what to do. We'll be there as well.
Awesome. Jeff Sentell, I'm Hannah Chalker. This is Before the Hedges, and we hope to see you right back here next week. Jeff, you're so good. So much information.
Very good job.
So much information. We'll see you guys later. Thanks so much for watching Before the Hedges.